5. Signs an elderly person is suffering in silence. Important warnings you must address. It began as a faint tremor at the corner of Elizabeth's lips, a tiny crease that formed whenever she tried to muster a polite smile in front of guests who came bearing flowers or fresh-baked pies. Her neighbors assumed she was merely fatigued from the hustle of life in her late 70s. They thought her occasional silences were typical signs of aging, nothing more. Yet there was a sorrow resting behind her eyes, visible if you took the time to look a second longer. In the mornings, she would linger by the kitchen window with her mug of tea. In the evenings, she would pace around her small living room, pretending to watch the news. Beneath the surface, though, her heart was heavy, weighed down by unspoken worries she had no words for. She wanted to share her burdens, but the shame of admitting them out loud seemed unbearable. Days stretched into weeks, each one bringing subtle changes that most people brushed aside as part of ordinary aging. Little did they know, Elizabeth's discreet withdrawal from conversation, coupled with her unsteady gazes and hushed sighs, pointed toward a silent battle raging inside. That internal war is not unique to Elizabeth. Many older adults experience private struggles, whether physical, emotional, or psychological, that they are reluctant or too embarrassed to reveal. The complexities of aging can heighten these hidden sorrows, especially when an individual believes no one can help or that admitting distress would become an unwanted burden on loved ones. According to the National Council on Aging, nearly 1 in 10 seniors faces some form of depression or debilitating sadness. Quite a few remain undiagnosed due to limited social contact or a personal desire to avoid admitting vulnerability. Understanding how older adults camouflage their suffering is vital. It empowers families, caregivers, and friends to step in with support, empathy, and meaningful interventions. This narrative will explore 5 significant warnings that an elderly person might be suffering in silence, drawing from experiences I've encountered over years of working in geriatric care, as well as recognized data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, and reputable mental health organizations. If you find anything here resonates with your own observations, you might share your thoughts in the comments. It could guide someone else who is unsure how to interpret an older loved one's unspoken distress. Elizabeth's story started in small increments. Her cheerful voice became subdued. Her appetite transformed into a mild disinterest in foods she once savored, and her daily chats with friends or relatives became a patchwork of awkward silences. It's easy to dismiss these changes as part of aging, yet the pattern is crucial. Before we proceed, keep in mind that I am not your personal healthcare provider. For specific advice, consult qualified professionals. Our focus is on raising awareness about subtle signals so you can encourage your loved one to seek help or at least open up about what troubles them. Now let's return to Elizabeth's situation. One day she sat quietly on her couch, flipping through old photo albums. Her sister, who had come to visit, asked if she was feeling well. Elizabeth gave a half-hearted nod but said nothing. Later that evening, when her sister mentioned being concerned about Elizabeth's shrinking social life, she brushed it off with a gentle laugh. The next morning, she found Elizabeth standing by the window, tears rolling down her cheeks. The older woman tried to hide them by looking away. That moment sparked a conversation about sorrow, pride, and the fear of burdening others. Most older adults who suffer in silence feel a deep sense of responsibility not to trouble family members, especially if younger relatives are busy with careers or raising children. Unfortunately, that sense of duty can lead them to conceal genuine discomfort or despair. The first warning that someone like Elizabeth might be quietly struggling is a gradual withdrawal from social activities or interactions. It often happens so slowly that people interpret it as normal for someone who is simply exhausted. You might notice they cancel gatherings more frequently than before, citing aches, fatigue, or a desire to stay home. At church events, they stand on the periphery, no longer engaging in the cheerful chatter. Old friends say they miss them at the weekly bingo night, but the older individual's excuses sound almost rehearsed. According to the American Psychological Association, social withdrawal can be a key indicator of depression or anxiety among older adults. Sometimes it signals deeper problems, like chronic pain or unspoken grief. Elizabeth was once an enthusiastic community volunteer. She loved knitting scarves for local shelters and singing in a small choir that visited nursing homes. Over time, though, her circle of activity shrank to just 2 or 3 short visits to the grocery store each week. Even that felt like a chore. Her neighbors rationalized this change by pointing to her age, never suspecting she felt a profound sense of worthlessness every time she left her house. She worried people would see through her facade. Rather than risk that humiliation, she stayed indoors. If you know someone who used to participate in clubs or social gatherings but has recently receded into the background, consider a gentle approach. Ask if they would like some company or if they feel overwhelmed. If they offer a vague explanation, remain patient. Let them know you genuinely care and are willing to listen without judgment. If you recognize this sign, feel free to comment with your story. It might encourage others to do the same. In the months that followed, Elizabeth's appetite wavered between mild and almost non-existent. She found herself skipping dinner, claiming she had snacked too much earlier. The second silent alarm, then, is an unusual or erratic shift in eating or sleeping patterns that cannot be easily linked to a clear medical cause. Sure, older adults can have fluctuating appetites due to medications or health conditions, but the difference here lies in the emotional undertones. Elizabeth sometimes forced a few bites of soup when others were watching, but alone, she survived on toast and water. She avoided lunch invites, fearing someone might notice how uninterested she was in food. Late at night, her mind raced with worries, making it hard for her to sleep more than 2 or 3 hours. The day after an almost sleepless night, she would appear lethargic and distant. Evidence from geriatric mental health studies suggests that disruptions to diet or rest often arise when an older person feels trapped by sadness, chronic anxiety, or unresolved grief. They might be physically capable of eating full meals, yet they simply lack the emotional energy to engage in something as routine as preparing or enjoying food. This gradual, secret retreat into an unhealthy dietary pattern echoes an inner turmoil they are trying to suppress. If your older family member claims to be full after a few bites, does not recall the last time they had a complete meal, or starts relying on excessive caffeine or sugary snacks to get through the day, it might be worth exploring whether stress, depression, or hidden worries are fueling these sudden changes. Observing sleep cycles is also crucial. If they struggle with insomnia or oversleeping, it can point to deeper mental or emotional strain. In Elizabeth's case, once her sister encouraged her to see a counselor, the professional discovered that her chaotic eating and sleeping routines mirrored overwhelming guilt and sadness connected to her late husband's death. She had never truly expressed that pain, believing she was supposed to move on without burdening anyone else. The counselor created a plan to stabilize her schedule and introduced gentle relaxation techniques that allowed her to find some relief. Meanwhile, Elizabeth began noticing little aches in her limbs. Sometimes it was her knees, other times her shoulders, even her stomach. On the surface, these pains could be dismissed as the inevitable consequences of getting older. However, she frequently visited different doctors, hoping someone would discover a tangible ailment that might justify what she felt inside. This brings us to the third warning: recurrent physical complaints or ambiguous health issues that lack a clear medical explanation. Elderly individuals who cannot articulate their emotional struggles might express them physically instead. In fact, research from the National Institute of Mental Health highlights how depression or anxiety in older adults can manifest as bodily discomfort, digestive problems, or chronic headaches. Elizabeth's doctors found nothing conclusively wrong with her blood work or imaging scans. They could recommend mild pain relievers, but the root cause kept eluding them. Her sister noticed a pattern. Every time Elizabeth felt particularly upset or had a difficult conversation, she would complain of severe pain in her joints the next day. That tension in the mind was converting to tension in the body. Sometimes these psychosomatic symptoms serve as a shield, a safe way to ask for help without admitting emotional need. If someone in your life frequently mentions pain that migrates from one spot to another and medical tests yield no clear answers, try gently exploring if they are facing hidden emotional distress. You might say, It sounds like you're under a lot of pressure lately. Is there anything on your mind causing you stress? Approach with empathy rather than accusation. If they reveal deeper hurts, you might suggest they speak with a mental health professional or a trusted faith advisor. If you've seen a similar pattern, your thoughts in the comments could guide another family that is still unsure how to interpret these complaints. Elizabeth's journey took another subtle turn. Her mood began to shift unpredictably. Some days she appeared unusually irritable over minor inconveniences, while on other days she spoke with an eerie calmness that seemed forced. Mood changes are not out of place in older adults. However, the fourth sign is an abrupt or steady shift in demeanor that conceals silent suffering. Perhaps they lash out when asked a simple question, or they become overly apologetic for small mistakes, as though terrified of causing any trouble. According to a report from the World Health Organization, older adults may hide severe depression behind either anger or an outward passivity, fearing that revealing their misery would be met with criticism or pity. In Elizabeth's case, she sometimes scolded her sister for not folding laundry correctly, even though it barely mattered. When confronted about her outburst, Elizabeth would deflate, whispering apologies that dripped with guilt. On other days, she was so subdued that even the doorbell ringing made her startle like a frightened animal, apologizing for her own nervousness. If your elderly loved one displays radical swings in mood, from unprovoked irritation to deep despair or unusual detachment, it could indicate they are weighed down by invisible sorrows. They might believe no one can truly understand, so they attempt to hide behind anger or an artificial calm. Offering a patient ear without judgment can pave the way for them to open up about what truly gnaws at their peace of mind. If you find yourself in a similar situation, you might share a few words below. Other readers could learn from your strategies in handling abrupt mood shifts. As if these changes were not already enough, Elizabeth also showed the fifth sign that an elderly person is suffering in silence. A reluctance to discuss personal feelings, combined with subtle hints of fear or shame whenever serious topics arise. Even if friends or relatives attempt heart-to-heart conversations, the older individual might deflect by changing the subject or making jokes. The concept of emotional vulnerability can be intimidating, especially for seniors raised in environments where personal issues were kept private. Sometimes they have endured traumas or major life events they have never divulged. At this stage, the idea of unpacking such burdens feels overwhelming or even impossible. Elizabeth resisted any probing about her deeper emotions. When her sister asked how she truly felt, Elizabeth responded with a story about a new bakery opening in town. She was aware of her own sadness, but too proud or too apprehensive to examine it. She worried about being labeled as weak or becoming a burden to her family. This phenomenon aligns with data from mental health charities, indicating that older generations may have grown up with stigmas around discussing depression, anxiety, or other emotional struggles. Instead, they learn to keep calm and carry on, often believing they must deal with hardships on their own. If you suspect someone is concealing heartache, watch for small tells. Do they glance away when serious topics come up, or do they push the subject onto someone else's problems? These tactics are often defenses to guard against perceived judgment. Offering unconditional acceptance and gentle reassurance can crack the facade, eventually inviting honest sharing. If you have gleaned insights from these experiences, you might leave a brief note in the comments to inspire others. Sometimes all it takes is a single story to show people that healing is possible, even for deep-seated wounds. Once her sister noticed these 5 signs in unison, she urged Elizabeth to consider outside help. Initially, Elizabeth declined, insisting she was just weary, but after more pressing conversations, she admitted having battled lingering grief and fear ever since her husband passed away a decade earlier. His absence reminded her of the fragility of life. The older she got, the less she trusted her ability to cope if something else tragic happened. Rather than ask for help, she kept her heartache locked up, hoping it would fade on its own. Yet sorrow rarely vanishes without acknowledgement. Through counseling sessions provided by a nearby senior center, Elizabeth discovered new ways to verbalize her sadness. She also encountered peers who had walked a similar path. Gradually, she resumed small social engagements, started cooking nutritious meals, and confessed that she felt pain in her joints each time she thought of painful anniversaries. With professional guidance, she developed practical coping mechanisms, such as journaling, short walks in nature, and supportive group discussions. It wasn't a magical cure, it was a gradual unveiling of burdens that had gnawed at her for years. The difference was that Elizabeth no longer had to hide in silence. If you see parallels between Elizabeth's story and someone dear to you, consider how valuable early intervention can be. If they seem to be withdrawing, skipping meals, complaining of vague illnesses, exhibiting erratic mood swings, or evading serious conversation, each sign could be a clue that deeper pain is brewing beneath the surface. This recognition is not about accusing them or forcing immediate change. It is about gently letting them know they have allies. Sometimes extending your hand in a consistent, compassionate manner can spark a gradual willingness to speak out. Ask them if they would be comfortable sharing small bits of what they are feeling. Reassure them that you value their independence and dignity, but also want them to know help is available. Simple gestures like writing a heartfelt letter or leaving notes that express support can make an immense difference, including a phone number for a counseling hotline or a local senior advocacy group might open a door they never realized existed. Remember that older adults might need multiple invitations before they trust that your offer is sincere. Patience and steady reassurance can break down the barriers that have kept them quiet, sometimes for decades. Although identifying these 5 signs is crucial, how we respond is equally important. If they persistently resist, it may help to consult a professional on your own. Geriatric psychologists, social workers, or spiritual counselors often have techniques for bridging communication gaps. They can suggest non-threatening ways to broach sensitive topics, such as using gentle I statements instead of pointing fingers. For example, "I notice you haven't been going to your usual social events. I'm worried you might be feeling low," sounds more caring and less accusatory than, "You never come out anymore, what's wrong with you?" This approach fosters a safer emotional environment where the senior may feel less defensive. If you have already tried such methods and have success stories to share, your narrative might spark hope for others who feel stuck. Another key component is building or restoring a sense of purpose. Many older adults who suffer quietly feel useless or disconnected from life's flow. Asking them for small favors can remind them that they still contribute. Invite them to share recipes, request their advice on practical matters, or involve them in simple activities they used to enjoy. By affirming their importance, you might encourage them to step out of isolation. Some individuals also find solace in volunteering or creative hobbies if their health permits. A local library program, a knitting circle, or even an online support group can ignite renewed enthusiasm. For Elizabeth, knitting scarves for a nearby homeless shelter helped her feel connected again. She saw that her efforts mattered. People needed her warmth, literally and figuratively. This revitalized her self-esteem and validated her existence. If you know seniors who found new life through volunteering or skill sharing, you can share those experiences in the comments, offering ideas for others who might not know where to start. At times, an older adult's silence may spring from a place of moral or emotional guilt. Perhaps they blame themselves for family conflicts, unresolved financial issues, or regrets they never voiced. They may worry that talking about these regrets will cause more harm than good, so they bottle up their pain. In certain cases, offering a private setting away from the hustle of daily life can encourage them to open up about old wounds. If they express fear of being judged, reassure them that empathy is the goal, not condemnation. Encouraging them to speak with a neutral counselor can help them process regrets in a structured way. According to some studies in geriatric therapy, guided reflection on past traumas can significantly reduce depressive symptoms in older adults. In Elizabeth's case, a piece of that puzzle was her lingering sadness about not having children of her own. She had never voiced it. She believed it was too late to change anything. Yet, releasing that sorrow, even if just by naming it, lessened the burden she carried. She realized that unspoken pain finds a way to manifest, whether through physical discomfort or mental turmoil. If you see them improving even slightly, maybe they agree to attend one social function or share a small slice of their feelings. Acknowledge that progress. Positive reinforcement can help them trust the path of openness. A gentle phrase like, "I really appreciate you telling me how you feel. I know it's not easy," can reassure them that their courage is recognized. Over time, these small victories accumulate, leading to broader conversations and stronger connections. Be prepared for setbacks, though. Healing is rarely linear. An older individual might open up one day and retreat the next. Continue to be present in a supportive manner without pushing too forcefully. Alongside emotional backing, be sure to watch for any pressing medical or psychological needs. Depression in older adults is sometimes linked to underlying conditions like thyroid imbalances or chronic pain issues that go unmanaged. Encouraging a thorough medical checkup can either rule out treatable causes or catch them early. If a loved one resists going to a doctor, consider offering to accompany them. Having a familiar face can reduce anxiety about potential diagnoses. Practical support might also involve helping them manage finances, fill out forms for therapy sessions, or contact charitable organizations for additional help. Such steps can lessen the feeling that their problems are insurmountable. If you have navigated these processes yourself, any pointers you share can alleviate someone else's worries about red tape. Now, let us step back and review the 5 silent alarms in a cohesive way. The first is that slow but consistent social retreat. The second is a shift in eating or sleeping patterns that seems emotionally driven. The third is recurring aches or pains without a confirmed medical origin. The fourth is an abrupt or steady shift in mood that hides deeper turmoil. And the fifth is a staunch reluctance to discuss personal struggles, coupled with fleeting glimmers of fear or shame when serious topics arise. Each sign alone could be explained away by typical aging processes, but when they converge, they become potent evidence that the person you care about might be suffering in silence. By understanding these signals, you can break the cycle of isolation that often intensifies despair. If you suspect a family member or friend is going through this ordeal, start with gentle conversation. Mention you have noticed changes and that you care about how they are feeling. If they resist, remain patient. If they show curiosity, offer them avenues for professional support or invite them to community events or safe discussion groups. Remind them that being vulnerable is not a weakness but a courageous step toward healing. You might also encourage them to consider confiding in a spiritual advisor if they have such a faith background, or to attend senior-oriented wellness classes that provide a non-threatening social outlet. Keep in mind, no matter how closed off someone appears, you never truly know what small gesture of kindness might open the first door. Elizabeth's experience highlights that none of this happens overnight. Her transformation from silent despair to cautious hope took time. Her sister remained consistently supportive, recommending articles on emotional health, sharing phone numbers of local support lines, and checking in regularly. With each honest discussion, Elizabeth shed a layer of her protective shell. She realized she was not alone. Many older adults harbor regrets, concerns, and even trauma that they keep hidden. Finding people who listen without judgment allowed her to breathe again. She still has occasional moments of vulnerability, but she has built a support system around her that includes a counselor, a few empathetic friends, and her devoted sister. Her appetite improved once she recognized that her body needed more than just nutrients. It needed the comforting knowledge that someone cared about her well-being. She also resumed occasional visits to the community knitting circle, where she met others who understood the unspoken weight older adults sometimes carry. If you find yourself resonating with this message, you might subscribe or comment with your own observations. By doing so, you help cultivate a space where caregivers and older adults can find mutual support. Every shared story can illuminate someone else's darkness, reminding them that silent suffering does not have to be a permanent state. Those reading might think, "That's exactly what my aunt is going through," prompting them to reach out in a meaningful way. For the older adults themselves who stumble upon this, it can be a gentle nudge that acknowledges their hidden aches, letting them know they are not alone. Silence may feel like a safe cocoon, but emerging from it can lead to renewed purpose and deeper connections. When you suspect that life has left an elderly loved one feeling overwhelmed, let them see that your concern is genuine. Offer to explore counseling options together, or simply invite them to talk over a cup of tea. Suggest resources from mental health organizations or local community centers that have professionals experienced in geriatric care. Mention that feelings of sadness or anxiety do not diminish their dignity. Acknowledging them, in fact, reflects remarkable courage. If finances pose a challenge, many senior centers or charities provide sliding scale fees or free support groups. The act of reaching out can dispel the notion that their burdens must be carried alone. In closing, remember that older adults often have an entire lifetime of experiences they carry inside. Regrets, triumphs, losses, and joys shape the tapestry of their inner world. Sometimes the quietest among them have the most to say. Recognizing these 5 hidden signs is not about prying, it is about offering a patient ear and an empathetic presence. Even when it seems like they are pushing you away, understand that fear and habit might be driving them. Continue to extend kindness and open invitations, gently reminding them that your support remains available whenever they are ready. If you can, share this awareness with others in your community. Neighbors, extended family, or local volunteers may be the first line of contact for an isolated senior. An alert neighbor who recognizes the subtle signals can intervene before silent suffering spirals into a serious crisis. Elizabeth's transformation illustrates the liberating power of compassion. Through small steps, consistent listening, and the courage to seek professional guidance, she found the relief she needed. The same can be true for any older adult in your circle. They might be silently wrestling with demons of past regrets or present anxieties, but there is hope. Knowledge equips you to sense their pain. Empathy urges you to respond constructively. Even the simplest gesture, like texting a heartfelt note or dropping by with a comforting meal, can plant a seed of trust. Over time, that trust can grow into honest conversations where real healing begins. If you or someone you know has already taken those steps, consider sharing the outcome below. Perhaps your insight will prevent another senior from slipping through the cracks. Our capacity for empathy does not diminish with age. Instead, it evolves into a profound ability to comprehend the complexities of life. By standing beside an older individual who suffers in silence, you honor not just their years of wisdom, but also their deep humanity. The journey may be challenging, however. The chance to offer genuine solace is a profound privilege. Let that privilege lead you to be attentive, to ask the right questions, and to remain a beacon of compassion even when words seem hard to come by. Then, together, we can transform silent suffering into a bridge toward understanding, support, and renewed hope.